Good evening. My name is Tonnette Collier, and I am here to give my presentation about nonprofit leadership and what I learned. I learned quite a bit. I think that nonprofit organizations that we really talked about and studied in this class, but to me, were your larger organizations that are kind of well established because the content and the material of this class was was beneficial and I learned a lot, but I would have liked to learn more about the struggles of nonprofit organizations in the trenches and the smaller organizations. When we learned about budgeting and leadership and social media and strategic planning, operational plans, and the qualities of a leader, it differs when you have the experience, such as myself, of working in a nonprofit organization, which is smaller, and from a low income area. It's totally, totally different. Some of the key things that I learned in this particular class is the state of nonprofits, and I think that the state of nonprofits is really, really bad right now, especially with the pandemic. Another thing that I learned about strategic planning, and and because I have this 40 years of nonprofit experience and 25 years as the founder and executive director of my own nonprofit, in which I retired in 2017. um, the nonprofit world, from my perspective, is totally different. And excuse me, leadership. It means a lot to have all these qualities and creative ways and innovation, but leaders in nonprofit world and these bigger organizations don't have the challenges that your smaller organizations have. You got big organizations like United Way, Red Cross, Aspica, Wounded Warriors. They get millions of dollars every year. But your smaller nonprofits in the trenches where things are really, really happening and needs are really, really vast and big, they don't have the funding. They don't have philanthropists or these board members that are wealthy or corporations backing them. So they most of the grant dollars that a small nonprofit have or is restricted. Whereas your bigger organizations, they have a lot of money rolling in annually, and some of them get over $1 million and probably $50 million a year in donations alone. So that gives them flexibility. Whereas in nonprofit world, leadership is totally different, and it puts the leader in a position where they got to continuously be creative and try to get money or unrestricted dollars in an already existing poor community. So I learned that there is great traits and skills that a leader may have, but from different perspectives and different actions that a leader has to take to um, help this agency or nonprofit survive. Another thing that I learned in this class was key to me was the presence of social media. I think also that social media is very, very important to organizations, and I I really, really enjoy using for social media for Sweetvine because it helped me communicate. It helped me expose my organization and show what we did because I believe in social exposure. And what I mean by social exposure is exposing the kids in our program to different worlds outside their community, what they see every day, which is a lot of violence, a lot of drugs, and um, nonchalant attitudes. I would just say that in a very nice way. Also, one of the key things that I learned is about fundraising. Fundraising is great, but fundraising in a low income community or for an organization from a low income community, it differs greatly when you're talking about when you compare larger organizations to smaller organizations. Larger organizations have the flexibility, they have the money that they can launch these big campaigns, whereas small nonprofits with a lot of unrestricted dollars cannot do that. Um, the most important thing that I learned from this class is that nonprofit leadership can be as best you as a leader make of it. You got to be compassionate and have that drive to make it work. So if I were to be in a nonprofit setting again, whether it's teaching at a nonprofit college or university, I can use what I learned from this class and try to help that university or college as much as possible. And I want to thank all of you. This class was different. It was different from what I had felt like it would be when I enrolled, but I did walk away with some insight. But what I would like to see that the curriculum change slightly to really include the struggles of nonprofit organizations in poor communities across America, how leaders are surviving, and what leaders are doing to keep nonprofits in these areas afloat. A lot of these nonprofits are closing now because of the pandemic and a competitive process for grants, and that money is just not floating out there like it was. But in the long run, most of these nonprofits in low income communities may not even exist in the next few years. It's going to be very few. I want to thank you, Dr. Peterson, and my classmates. I really enjoyed every one of you and reading your posts. God bless you all and have a great evening.